Hey there, colleague. How are you doing? If you clicked on this video, the answer to that might be not super great. So do me a favor, pull up a cuppa, and let's just have a little chat about this question of whether or not you should quit your teaching job. All right, so I'm filming this video in October, Friday the 13th, actually. And October is one of those times in the teaching year where you can just start to sense that it's hard. The job is tough, the newness has well worn off, Thanksgiving is far away, and you can become fatigued, especially if you have a difficult to manage class or classes. You're having a lot of students not do as well academically as you'd hope. Maybe you're teaching a new prep or 2 or 3 or 4. Could be you're getting some administrative flack or confusion from district office. There's a lot of things that can start to be very felt problems around this time of year. I've actually got 2 colleagues right now, close friends of mine, who have both said to me in different conversations that they are actively looking for other jobs. And after the second of these conversations, I kind of looked up at my calendar and I said, oh yeah, it is that time of year, isn't it? And while I'm not currently job seeking this October, there have been Octobers where I've been in that boat and I'm just thinking, gosh, there's got to be a better way for me to make a living than this. So should you do it? Should you actively search for jobs? Should you get your parachute packed so you can jump out of this dive bombing airplane called education? Well, that depends. One of the colleagues that prompted this video is frustrated because he feels like he just doesn't really have space to enjoy his life. He's got 4 preps right now, and he's just a hyper conscientious teacher who is going to bring his absolute best to each one of his preps. So when you have 4 different preps, that means you're going to have to spend a lot of time thinking about and working on 4 different classes. And so workload wise, you have a ton of work to do in that situation. So if you've been working that hard, working every single night, working some weekend time, trying to do things like give student feedback, plan great lessons, collaborate with same course colleagues, then yeah, by October, you're just thinking, gosh, this is really a drag. Now, this person doesn't hate his job. He's not bad at it. He's actually amazing. But I don't care how much you love your job, how amazing at it you are, if you're working 60 or 70 hours a week. I don't know how many hours this individual's working, but that's a normal work week for teachers in this type of situation. And then you start doing things like looking at your paycheck or talking to relatives or friends outside of education. All of a sudden, it's just super easy to think, gosh, there's got to be a better way to do this. So if that's your situation, if you're just working around the clock and you're exhausted, first of all, know that it's super normal to be having an adverse reaction to that. It makes total sense. You're not a sellout. You're not meant to be a teacher. You're just experiencing large amounts of time pressure and energy pressure, and you've been experiencing them now for several months. And there's just not a way to be a human being and not have that affect your sense of well-being and flourishing. That's just going to take a toll. For folks in this type of situation, what I would say before you put in your 2 weeks notice is experiment with satisficing. I write about satisficing in these 6 things in a couple of different places. I'm just going to read you the definition that I include on page 164. Satisfice is a verb created by Nobel laureate Herbert Simon in the 1950s as the combination of the words satisfy and suffice. I tend to describe it to people as satisfying the requirements of a task while sacrificing the optimal level of completing that task. Does that make sense to you? So you're basically reaching the requirement of a task. So in this case, let's say for 1 of your preps out of 3, you're going to reach the requirements for teaching that prep, but you're going to sacrifice the performance between that satisfactory level and the best possible level that you're capable of. So you're giving up some of your potential performance, some of your potential achievement, some potential perfection and excellence. You're giving that up and allowing yourself to reduce the quality of instruction in that prep to satisfactory. Due to the inordinate number of expectations that we face as educators, knowing when and how to satisfice is a critical skill for flourishing as a teacher. So I would say default settings for being an educator is we have crazy amounts of expectations placed upon us by ourselves, colleagues, our departments, our bosses, our students, their parents, our community, policymakers. Tons of expectations are placed on the teacher just by default. But now if you've got a situation like 4 preps, that's just like multiplied by 4. And so before you quit your job, if you're feeling overworked, look really hard at all the tasks that you're doing in a day and ask yourself, where could I conceivably satisfice and not lose my job? And the thing with satisficing is you're probably never going to lose your job for doing it because you're still meeting satisfactory levels. It's not like you're saying, I'm just going to not plan lessons anymore for one of my preps. But you are saying, I'm going to experiment for using the same types of routines again and again and again, the same types of lesson chunks again and again and again in one or more of my preps. I really, really want to encourage you, if you're in the overworked condition, play around aggressively with satisficing. Play around aggressively with satisficing. And then the other thing that I would say, this is going to kind of force your hand at satisficing, set strict working hours for yourself. So maybe it's 6 a.m. until 5 p.m. That's still a really hefty work week, but that's less than many teachers in this overworked condition work on the weekends. Give yourself maybe Saturday mornings until 11 a.m., not as much time as you can get on a Saturday and Sunday. By setting these strict rules for yourself and even sharing them with an accountability partner, you're now going to have a finite amount of time in which to do your job, and it's going to force you, if you're strict with yourself, to figure out which work matters the most and which work can be satisficed. And another important side benefit of this work schedule approach is that you're going to have time that's protected against work. So like if you're a 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. person, 5 p.m. and on, that's time when you're not allowed to work. And I'm including checking your work email, answering work-related text messages. Like you're not allowed to do anything. There's no encountering of work during times when you've decided you're not going to work. And so now that vacuum is going to have to be filled, hopefully, by things that give you a sense of identity outside of work, a sense of achievement outside of work, or just a sense of fulfillment, a sense of rest, a sense of enjoyment of the rest of life. Usually these two tools, satisficing and having a strict work schedule, can help you escape from the overworked state and also let you gain some wisdom as well. However, if you do that for a month and you play around with satisficing and work schedules and you're still miserable, then it probably is time for you to do an honest soul search and ask, is it time for me to try a different line of work for a little while? Because ultimately, colleague, if you do decide to quit your teaching job, you need to understand there's no shame in that. There are so many good endeavors in which to invest your hours of labor each week. There's so many great jobs, great ways of contributing to society. I mean, unless you're like slinging meth or running a brothel, unless you're doing those extreme things, it's good work. Listen, teaching is a beautiful job. I love that we get to invest in young people, that we are paid to make these contributions that are going to have impacts that we'll never fully see. I think that there's a great and deep beauty to that. But it doesn't mean that that's the only way to work a job that has deep and great beauty. The other colleague who spoke to me was more struggling with some really toxic classroom environments that he's seen take place. He's been teaching for a long time too, and he's a competent classroom manager, super great instructor. He's great at facilitating student growth, but he's just getting worn down by some of the really anti-school, anti-learning attitudes that he's encountering day after day after day after day in some of his classes, and that's just becoming demoralizing to him. And again, I really hope that this guy doesn't quit his job because he's an amazing teacher. He has a beautiful impact every single year. I've seen it firsthand. I've heard about it secondhand, and frankly, selfishly, I just love working with him. So if you're in that situation, I'd encourage you first